This is a story called Pointing to Nowhere. There is a fingerpost at a road junction in the middle of nowhere, like so many of these delightful old-fashioned signs that points to places down country lanes. Standing north at the lane from Markham south, you'll find that eastwards points to Headley Bottom and west to Pensham Green. Now, look closely, for there is a fourth pointer, smaller than the others, that directs one to a thick, impenetrable hedge. Yet the sign reads, to Tilling Point. Pull out an OS map and find the same spot, and there appears to be no such place. Tilling Point doesn't register, but somewhere through and beyond that hedge, it really does exist. You'll have to find an older map, a parish map perhaps, to find the route to Tilling Point. There, marked clear for all to see, is an unmetalled road leading from where the hedge is now down the hill to the valley beneath, and just beyond the gently running spring that trickles from the craggy sandstone rock outbreak. The map shows the old farm, church, and even a village pub. There's a small school marked too, and some form of assembly room where meetings are held. The dwellings are sketchy, because apart from the squire's house and a couple of other important folks' larger property, the usual labourers' cottages aren't indicated. They move about a bit too much, rarely lasting more than a year, and they're so roughly built and unable to withstand the strong winds at winter, they're really hardly worth noting. I suppose you could say that the folk at Tilling Point keep themselves to themselves much of the time, which is why few visitors come along or need access to the now overgrown lane from the fingerpost. But this wasn't always the case, of course. At one time the community was pretty industrious and supplied a good deal of coal to the other villages. And as luck would have it, Tilling Point lies on a pretty decent seam, or rather it did, until it dried up. And then, not so long ago, there was a great consternation, for a prospector, convinced that all the coal hadn't fully disappeared, had stumbled on something remarkable after many years of searching. A huge lump of the black stuff was located in the most, and as it happened, unusual and inconvenient place, that of under the squire's residence. But wait, he protested to the shaking heads gathered at the assembly rooms a day or so after the discovery. Think of the money, the increased employment, the fame. It will surely put Tilling Point back on the map. No more will we be just a bunch of subsistent farmers eking out a living. Prosperity will be ours. We shall be able to hold our heads high and have a better future for our children. After several weeks of argument and debate, the pros and cons examined in micro detail and all the financial implications listed, it was time to inform the squire. He would have to move. His old house would be razed to the ground, and the lump, the dirty great nugget of black gold, the size of 50 houses, hewn from the ground. It would be blasted into manageable chunks and then exported to the old markets. The squire would be fully compensated, of course, receiving not only a moving fee, but a 10% profit from the sales margins. But also he would have a bigger dwelling than before, grander and more permanent. It was finally agreed, and work was carried out to accommodate the squire fully before the excavation could commence on the coal extraction. Those fit for work were assigned appropriate tools and protective clothing. Others assisted in catering, transport, administration, and in a myriad of other tasks that were required for the mineral removal. A special train and track pulled by draft animals was built to aid the movement of the valuable rock to a depot where it could be loaded onto wagons and taken to market and other areas of distribution. To see the folk of Tilling Point pulling together, hawking the coal, building a better future after so long was immensely satisfying. The spring was put back into every individual. Having a common purpose brought meaning and happiness to all. And the money rolled in, the population expanded, new homes were built, the village grew larger than ever. A sports ground and centre was constructed, a swimming pool too, even a theatre. It was suggested by a small committee of aldermen that the village sign ought to be bigger. It was often missed on the fingerpost, and possibly the hedge barring the entrance to the valley ought to be opened again. Dare they, the people of Tilling Point, open the way and invite the rest of the world back into their community? The chairman organised a general meeting of the populace. Notices were put up. A decision like this needed the consent of every citizen. On the appointed day, a massive crowd gathered on the purposefully mown heath a little above the village, not far from the hedge and the fingerpost, where the rumble of the occasional car could be heard passing, either to Headley Bottom, Pensham Green, or indeed, on rare occasions, to Markham South. An eerie silence befell the gathered multitude as the mayor stepped up onto a stack of wooden boxes and, with the use of a loud hailer, addressed the sea of expectant faces. But as he outlined the idea, those open-mouthed faces shut firmly, and eyebrows became knitted. Abundantly clear it was to the alderman, the mayor, and the committee that opening the village to the outside world was a non-starter. This was reinforced as the crowd began to disperse, shaking their heads and shrugging their shoulders. The mumblings then started. The industry, the coal production, the hard work, the expansion of the village. Was this really what the people of Tilling Point wanted? Weren't they happier, many asked, just farming the land, feeding themselves and spending time with their families and friends? The coal production died once again, and life slowed a pace. And the sign on the fingerpost remained unchanged, and the thick hedge grew thicker. And Tilling Point stayed off the OS maps and continued to be unknown to pretty much everyone outside the village. And who can blame them? Living in houses made of grass or bits of straw, fallen oak leaves, or hollowed out horse chestnuts, standing barely an inch high in their stockinged feet, the Tilling Point folk wouldn't fit in with us humans, now would they?